Hello and welcome to the Inner Codes of the Beautiful. We were looking at the facets of the sun, and we've been exploring the various forms of Surya, the Adityas. Today it is the turn of the Aditya that we see when sun is in the sign of Libra, which is usually between mid-October to mid-November. The Aditya that we know as Pushan or Pushā Adityā. Pushan is the Aditya who guides the souls in their journeys and guides the souls to their final destination. He is also one of the most benevolent and even harmless Aditya, unlike the other forms of Surya, given its inherently blazing nature. Pushā Adityā, on the contrary, is very benevolent, very giving, and very forgiving even. So we will look at Pushā Adityā, his various attributes, and how Pushā Adityā affects us in our lives, and specifically for those individuals who have sun in the sign of Libra. One of the most important associations in terms of a theme with Pushan is the idea of a journey. Pushan is the one who enables a successful journey, because Pushan is the one who has the intricate knowledge of all the paths that leads to one's destination. These journeys could be literal and manifest, they could also be figurative and also unmanifest. So Pushan not only enables you to successfully reach your destination, he also ensures you're protected along the way and you have the knowledge to take the shortest path and the most effective path to your destination. Now, it also means that downstream there are certain implications, because journeys are made for various reasons, and even if one were to reach another person, that also requires a journey. It could mean a literal journey to reach another person. It could also mean a figurative journey to reach another person. Now, these journeys to enable successful meetings with others also is a blessing of Pushan. Now, when we talk about journeys and we talk about the not so literal, not so physical journeys, then one has to talk about the spiritual journey. And the ultimate journey is the journey of the soul to the divine. And the path to the divine is again a blessing that Pushan bestows on people, and he bestows the knowledge of what path to take to the divine. And hence it's not a surprise that Pushan is associated with the natural 12th house in Vedic astrology, which is Pisces. Pisces, or the natural 12th house, is the house that concerns with ends, liberation and moksha. And among the 27 nakshatras or constellations that are spread across the 12 signs of the zodiac, the very last 27th nakshatra, Revati, which signifies symbolically the end of the journey of the soul, is lauded by Pushā. He is the Devata of the nakshatra of Revati. And what it suggests is the final culmination and the final reaching out to the divine is enabled by Pushā. Now, besides the theme of journeys, Pushā is also the one who bestows us with resources in the form of cattle and animals and so on. Now, why would that be? The cattle and animals have various benefits for us. They serve us in different ways. They are in some ways used by us. Now, how would that be? Because when one has cattle, one has the material value of this cattle, because one can always sell the cattle and get some material wealth in exchange for selling the cattle. So that is one of the ways one benefits by owning cattle or animals. The other way is one gets the various dairy products from cattle. So you get milk, yogurt, ghee, cheese, and so on. These are all byproducts of milk. That again, that's something that you get from cattle to nourish yourself. You also have the meat from animals that is there to again nourish oneself. And then of course you have certain animals that are used as modes of transportation. So one can have a horse, and then the horse can be used as various forms of transportation, or one has the bullock carts. So animals can be used as modes of transportation. Then also you have animals to protect you. So it's not uncommon to have guard dogs and so on. So animals in that sense serve humans in different ways, where they have material value. They also become sources of nourishment, and they also become means of transport and means of protection. Now, all of this is again a blessing of Pushā. Now, why is that again? Pushā is the one who is the creator of the Indrajal, the net that Indra possesses. And what does this net do? Indrajal, or Indra's net, ensnares all the souls. And once all the souls, like a fishing net, ensnares all the souls, Pushā blesses some by getting these souls to serve the one he blesses. So these could be in the form of the souls of all these cattle and these animals who are serving you. So that's a blessing of Pushā. Now, besides this, when someone has these kind of resources and benevolence given to them by Pushā, what it also does is, unlike the other forms of Surya, the other Adityas, which are relatively more fierce and fiery, Pushā tends to become very passive. Because the resources are already given to you, you tend to relax. So Pushā, because he is in Libra, the natural 7th, he is like the gentle setting sun. He's not blazing like the midday sun, nor is he like the early morning sun, the Savitur Aditya, who is rising and he's creating the day and creating and inspiring all the things that are to happen in the day. So unlike the agenda of Savitur Aditya or the other Adityas during the midday, one can see, Pushan is like the gentle, beautiful setting sun. So what that also means is sun, who is the creator, he is setting. Hence, sun is not his usual self. That's why in Vedic astrology, sun in the 7th house is considered as debilitated. He is not his usual self. But on the flip side, he is one of the most gentle Suryas, or the forms of Surya that one can experience. Pushan has a very important role to play in relationships, and in fact he plays a crucial role in perhaps the most important relationship for an individual, which is the relationship between oneself and one's spouse. Now, how does this connection come about? The spouse is seen from the 7th house, the 7th house from the ascendant, and the ascendant or lagna represents the individual. And the 7th house is the diametrically opposite, also the complementary opposite house. And the natural 7th house is the house of Libra. Now, it is in Libra, and when Sun is in Libra, that we see the presence of Pushan and the role that he plays. And it's also in Libra, the natural 7th, which has a strong association with the Graha Shukra or Venus. Why is that? The natural 7th house is also called as the house of Reta Bhava. Reta, Retas. Retas is semen. Retas is also known as Shukla, which is also another word that denotes semen. And Shukla has an association with the word Shukra, or the Graha Shukra. Now, Shukra is the one that basically becomes strong in the 7th house. Why is that? It's in the 1st house that the sun rises and sun sets in the 7th house. So, if the 1st house is the eastern direction, 7th house is the western direction. And very interestingly, amongst all the grahas, all the planets, Shukra or Venus is the only planet where the sun rises in the west because of its inverse rotation. So, Shukra in fact becomes strongest in the natural 7th house of Libra, and hence he brings about this association with being the doorway to understanding one's partner or spouse, and also to enable creation. Now, when we talk about creation, then we have to talk about a very important myth that is associated with the 7th house, which also has an association with Pushan. There's a very fascinating story that finds mention in a few Puranas, including the Matsya Purana and the Bhagavata Purana. This story also finds mention in the Taittiriya Samhita, and this is a story which is both fascinating and intriguing in equal measure. In fact, it's been a source of much debate over time. This is the story of Prajapati and Saraswati. Prajapati is the lone genderless creator. He is the creator of all the beings. So, from the offerings given to the gods, it is said that Prajapati creates. And when Prajapati desired to create in his own form, which is basically the form of the humans, Prajapati decides to create the complementary opposite element, which is the feminine element. So from himself he creates the feminine element, who we now know as Saraswati. And when the complementary opposite emerges, the feminine element emerges, the masculine element becomes Brahma. And when Brahma sees Saraswati, he is struck by her incredible beauty, and that causes him to have a sense of deep desire and he gets amorous. So in order to satiate his sense of rising desire, when he approaches Saraswati, the gods, the devatas, are outraged because the devatas perceive the creator and the created in a very different way. The devatas see that all that is created by the creator are his children. That being the case, this kind of a relationship between Brahma and Saraswati would not be appropriate. And given this sense of outrage, they approach Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, he unleashes the trident or Trishul on Brahma when he is in the state of high armor. And when the trident strikes Brahma, Brahma releases his seed or Rathas on earth. Now, the devatas have done their job. They went to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva unleashed the trident on Brahma, and Brahma is stuck. And then the process of creation has actually been stopped, because that was the fundamental role that Brahma has to play. So, over time, the devatas realize, when their outrage has subsided and they have cooler heads, they realize that it has not really helped them, because the process of creation has come to a standstill. That is when they decide that perhaps it is not right, and we have to again ensure that the process of creation continues. So in order to do that, what the devatas do is they decide to offer the Rathas of Brahma that has been spilt on earth as offering to the gods, to an appropriate god who would be able to bring back the creative energy of Brahma. So what they do is they first approach the devata Bhaga Aditya. They feel that Bhaga might be the Aditya who would be able to take in this offering of Brahma's Rathas. Now we need to keep in mind that Brahma is pure sattva, and from pure sattva is pure light, and it's pure creative energy. That being the case, the Rathas of Brahma is not ordinary by any measure. So when the Rathas is offered and Bhaga even casts his eye on Brahma's Rathas, Bhaga goes blind. So Bhaga is unable to take the radiance of Brahma's Rathas. Then the gods approach another Aditya. And whom do they approach? They approach Pushā. Pushā, he goes to accept this offering. But when he even goes near the Rathas that's offered, Pushā loses all his teeth. That is when Brihaspati is Guru, or he is the Guru of the Devas. Brihaspati is the son of the Rishi Angiras, and Angiras in turn is the son of the Rishi Bhrigu. So Brihaspati suggests that the correct and the right and the most powerful Aditya who would be able to take this energy is Savitur. So they approach Savitur, and Savitur Aditya, as we have seen in our past episodes, is the Aditya who is like Brahma himself. He has the ability to create. So with the immense power of Savitur Aditya is able to transform the Rathas into a birthed being, and hence he creates, he re-establishes Brahma's ability to continue to create. So what we understand from this myth, myths, like I always mention, myths are to be understood, to be meditated upon, because these are vehicles that deliver deeper insights. So they need to be unraveled layer by layer so that one draws deeper insights from the myth. Here we see a situation where simply the process of creation by itself is quite complicated. It's very difficult to draw the line for the creator as against the created. And when one does not draw the line between what one creates while playing the role of the creator, it leads to complications. The second thing is Pushā Adityā, who was offered something that was not his but Brahma's. Bhaga literally means a part, a portion. So when one takes claim on someone else's creation, it leads to blindness, as in one basically is blinded to the lack of appropriateness of the situation. That is the second point that comes up. The third that comes up is Shukra, who is the Karaka for procreation, Venus. And as a result of procreation, the resultant children that one has, Shukra again goes blind when it comes to one's own children. So that becomes another issue when Shukra gets obsessed over one's own children or one's creations to the point of being blinded to the shortcomings of one's children. That's another issue that comes up. So very interestingly, in the Vedic astrology or Jyotisha, one actually can literally use this as a principle to see if there is a situation of blindness in an individual. When Venus has an association with the 12th house and the luminous grahas, sun or moon, has a shadowing, this darkening or blindness caused by Rahu, one can infer that there is a possibility of blindness in the individual. So this whole association of creation, light, darkness and blindness comes about from this myth of Prajapati and Saraswati. Pushā has a very important connection with the Yajurveda. As I was mentioning earlier, Pushā is the one who guides us to the destination. He shows us the path. And Yajurveda is the Veda that deals with all the rituals one performs and worship in the right way to reach the various forms of the divine. So when we talk about Yajurveda and Pushā, one of the most important stories is that of Yajnavalkya and his guru Vaishampayana. Yajnavalkya was one of the legendary characters. He was known, besides his sparkling intelligence, he was known for his piety and his devotion towards his guru. And Vaishampayana in turn was also a very brilliant rishi, and he was the disciple of Vedavyasa. Vedavyasa, as most of you would know, is the compiler of the 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda and Atharvana Veda. And the Yajurveda was given to Vaishampayana to continue. He was like a custodian of the Yajurveda. And among the 27 branches of Yajurveda, Vaishampayana taught his disciples in turn these Vedas. And amongst his disciples was Yajnavalkya. Now it so happened that Vaishampayana, being a very important rishi of the time, was part of an agreement that the rishis, the leading rishis of the day had made, which was that in times of any crisis or anything important that had to be resolved, addressed among the rishis, they would all convene on Mount Meru, and it was also imperative on each of those rishis to absolutely make sure that they convene on Mount Meru. And should any one of them not do so, then they would incur the wrath of a Brahmana Hatya, which is the killing of a Brahmana. So it so happened that there was a need for all the rishis to meet on Mount Meru, but Vaishampayana was not able to make it. And just as they had agreed upon and also had forewarned, Vaishampayana by accident kicks his sister's little child who dies. And then what happens is Vaishampayana goes to his disciples and he asks of them to perform the rites to propitiate, to expiate his sins of committing the murder of the child by them performing the rituals on his behalf. So Yajnavalkya didn't take much time to flatly refuse his guru. And Yajnavalkya tells that he feels that he should not be performing those rituals and penance in the company of such incompetent and ignorant fellow students of his. So his guru obviously gets very angry and he tells, what use is of a disciple who does not listen to what I have to say? So he tells Yajnavalkya to return all that he had taught him. So Yajnavalkya tells him that I truly went by the spirit of what you taught me, so hence I do not have any guilt in what I had just told. But in any case, he returns whatever is learned by ejecting all the knowledge that is learned from his stomach. So he disgorges. And whatever knowledge that is ejected is stained with his blood. And hence, that is called as the Krishna Yajurveda. Krishna being black, and the blood-stained Yajurveda, the remnants of the Vedas that he had learned, which he disgorges, is what eventually becomes the Krishna Yajurveda. And what his fellow disciples do is they take the form of partridges, titri in Sanskrit. So these titris, they go and they take up the remnants that was disgorged by Yajnavalkya, and the knowledge that they imbibe became the Krishna Yajurvedas, and the practitioners became the charakas because of charana performing the rituals and penances, which of course they did on behalf of their guru. Now the story is not over here yet, because Yajnavalkya now starts with a clean slate and he goes to Pushā, and Pushā teaches him the Yajurveda with all the clarity that's required in its complete form. That form of Yajurveda is called the Shukla Yajurveda. The Shukla Yajurveda is the white Yajurveda, which is complete with no loose ends, as against the Krishna Yajurveda, which was taken up and absorbed in bits and pieces. So Pushā here fulfills the aspiration of Yajnavalkya and guides him and gives him the full knowledge. And he hence proves to be the Surya manifestation, Aditya, who guides one to his destination and shows him the right path. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Pushā Adityā. Thanks for joining me. I hope you will join me next week. Till then, take care.